combination of the number of members of the House of Representatives you have, plus your 2 senators. So when you got a state like Wyoming, which has 1 member of Congress and 2 senators, 3 electoral votes, that is 1 electoral vote for each, what, 300,000 people, let's say, in Wyoming. That sound about right? I think so.
700, yeah.
Something like that. Okay. Now, if you're in California, when you got, I don't know, 30 members of the Congress or whatever, and 2 senators, your electoral vote, you can imagine, will be like, you get 1 electoral vote for about 300,000. I'm picking numbers out of the air, but I think you get it. You get the idea. So you have a bigger impact on who the President of the United States is based on this absolutely anachronistic thing called the Electoral College. It makes no sense. The first speech that I gave in the U.S. Senate in 1979, I probably shouldn't remind you how long you've been sending me to the Senate. My opponent will be younger than I am and talk about my aging presence. Anyway, in 1979, the first speech that I gave was against the Electoral College. I was supporting a constitutional amendment of Birch Bayh to eliminate the Electoral College. He was right then, it's right now. It ain't gonna happen. You need, what, 3/4 of the states, 2/3 of the Congress to amend the Constitution. So it's, now, that's the bad news. The good news is that there is a way, without amending the Constitution, to get rid of the Electoral College. There's some people who have figured out a very, very clever and a very effective way to do this. And here's the way it's working. And it's underway. If enough states agree in an interstate compact, a contract between states, and these are enforceable compacts, if enough states with enough electoral votes agree that no matter who wins the popular vote in their state, that their electoral votes will go to the winner of the popular vote in the country. These are enforceable contracts. You know, these are, states enter into these compacts all the time, and the courts enforce them. So if you got, you know, California, Texas, you won't get Texas probably, but California, New York, and you know, get Ohio and Michigan and Illinois, you get the big population states with enough electoral votes to, if any candidate got that many electoral votes, he or she wins, to sign an agreement that all of our electoral votes will go to the candidate who wins the national popular vote. We can, without amending the Constitution, we can get rid of the Electoral College. And that, a number of states have already, by the way, passed laws to that effect. They don't go into effect unless and until the majority of the needed states will sign the compact. Because no state's going to put itself at a disadvantage until the system is changed. It all has to happen at one time. Now, by the way, on this issue, there's another proposal floating around which is dangerous, starting in California, by a real right-wing guy with a lot of money, who's going to put on the California ballot, maybe this year, a proposal that California's electoral vote be apportioned according to the vote in California. In other words, if California goes 65% Democratic and 35% Republican, the Republicans would get 1/3 of California's electoral votes. That will be a disaster for Democrats. If any state that is a Democratic state, which now has all of its electoral votes going to the winner, and ties one hand behind its own back and apportions its electoral votes according to the vote in that one state, it puts no Democrats likely to win a presidential election. If it's the states that go Democratic that do that, unless all the states did that. Now, if all the states did that, it's the same as this other thing which I talked about.
The Veterans for Peace are coming to Washington, D.C. to testify, similar to what happened when the John Kerry and his group came to testify during the Vietnam War. Is your office going to be welcoming
Sure.
or doing something to them? It's, I think, March
Well,
13th.
I don't know, yeah, I haven't heard about it, but of course we would welcome them. Since I've been a critic of the Iraq War, but even if I weren't, I mean, we welcome our constituents regardless, and particularly our veterans, by the way.
Yeah, they are the
And
veterans.
one of the lessons that we've learned, I think, as a people, and it's kind of reassuring that we have, is that we ought to, we've learned to fight these issues over policy, like the Iraq War, where most of the American people now oppose it. We fight our issues against the policymakers, not against the people who wear the uniform. Because even people vehemently opposed to this war are not taking out that vehemence on the men and women in uniform. And it's the right thing that we not do that. In the Vietnam War, that was not true too often. And we have to understand that these are professional men and women, that when they become members of the military, they take an oath that they will carry out the orders of the civilian leaders. We want that in a democracy. We don't want the military to be floating out there on their own. We want them to be civilian controlled. We don't like the civilian control at the moment, at least I don't. You know, most of us in this room didn't vote for George Bush. He wasn't even elected the first time, but nonetheless, he got the Congress, not me, to authorize this war. And so we can't take out these differences on our troops. So regardless of what side of the issue those troops or those veterans are on, of course
Oh,
they're
the veterans are going
they'll
to
be welcome. No, I know.
Yeah,
I'm familiar with the group. I didn't know that they were coming forward. Yeah.
Going to talk about veterans, has the inequality between the regular service people and the National Guard been addressed, and why has it, what has happened with what's taking so long to get these guys the help they need? And
Which help are we talking about? I'm talking about like the
medical help.
medical.
they're getting.
Okay, Joe, let me give you where we are on that. First of all, the answer is yes. We really have kind of one military now in terms of the Guard and the active duty people. It's unified. The Guard has had huge pressure put on them as a result, by the way. I mean, I just was at a National Guard ceremony actually this morning where a unit was going over to Afghanistan, which is a very different situation from Iraq, and I won't get on a sidetrack to talk about that, but nonetheless, that was a Guard unit. Many of these members of the Guard have gone on 3 and 4 and 5 deployments. That's never been what the National Guard was supposed to be. So we've overused and overstretched our National Guard. But in terms of benefits, in terms of pay, in terms of medical care, in terms of equipment now, we think we've just almost gotten to the point where the equipment in the Guard is almost as new and as good as the equipment in the active duty force. So the answer to what I think your question is driving at is yes. But we also, after Walter Reed, have now taken some major steps to make sure that a Walter Reed type fiasco never happens again. The public, no matter where they were again on this war, really reacted strongly to the Walter Reed incident, where you had somebody who was wounded, who was an outpatient, who sat for I don't know how many months being unable even to get an appointment at Walter Reed. We took a major step just within the last 2 weeks in the same defense authorization bill, which we as Democrats can be proud of for a lot of reasons, but this is one of them. It was a bipartisan support, so I don't want to say that Republicans did support this, but now that we've taken over the Congress, we've actually been able to get this done. We have basically, we're making seamless the transition for a member of the armed forces between the time that they're discharged medically, let's say, and the time that they go to the Veterans Administration. Until this happened, until this change and this reform, someone who has, for instance, had PTSD could be given a 30% disability, even worse, even a 10 or 20% disability rating by the Department of Defense. No longer able to engage in combat, so discharged. then goes to the Veterans Administration, and then a